You're listening to Parenting Our Future with certified parent coach Robbin McManne, author of The Yelling Cure and founder of Parenting for Connection. My podcast is all about providing you with the tools and solutions you need in your parenting so you can create the family you always wanted. Hello, everybody. It's Robbin here. Welcome back to Parenting Our Future. Do I have a guest for you? I know I always say that I have the best guests, and today is no exception. I just love bringing you all of these amazing experts for my show. I have Dr. Roseann Hodge, and just you wait until you hear her talk. You're going to love her. So Dr. Roseann is a trailblazing psychologist with almost 30 years of experience in pediatric mental health. She is the founder and director of the Global Institute for Children's Mental Health and Dr. Roseann and Associates. By the way, that website is incredible. Her Connecticut-based center, established in 2001, has helped thousands of children and adults reverse the most challenging conditions such as ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, concussion, learning disability, Lyme disease, PANS, PANDAS, and so on. In fact, your expertise could fill a library of what you've done. And you have the books actually to back up that library. So welcome, Dr. Roseann.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. And, I've been working a long time. So, that's what happens when you've been in the field almost 3 decades, right? Is you build a body of work, and, how blessed am I to be able to have helped so many kids, teens, and their families. So I have the privilege to be able to do that every day, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, that's so great. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. And we're going to start by talking about teletherapy, because this is something brand new that's come up out of this whole pandemic. Now, it's been around before, like over the phone and that sort of thing, but now everything's being done over the computer, over telehealth, that sort of thing. Just had a doctor's appointment yesterday and it was over a screen. So you are helping people navigate this whole area of teletherapy.
Yeah. So I just wrote a book that comes out in October. It's called the Teletherapy Toolkit, and it's the first book ever written on teletherapy activities that therapists can use with kids, teens, and families. And what happened was I, have a team of therapists. And once we kind of realized we've been doing teletherapy, I've been doing teletherapy for 10 years, and we'll talk about what it is. But when I kind of realized that this is staying, people are actually preferring teletherapy for a lot of those benefits, right? That it's convenient, you don't have to drive. Sometimes it's increased privacy. You don't have to see everybody in the weight room, and just a lot of great things. And it's as clinically valid, according to research, as in-person therapy sessions. So when I saw that teletherapy was going to be sticking around for at least a couple of years, I mean, this pandemic isn't going anywhere anytime soon. If we know about how long a virus takes, and we look at the Spanish flu, it took about 3 years for the Spanish flu to resolve. Sorry, everybody, that's heartbreaking. But we're moving through it. We're taking our stride, and hopefully people are recalibrating and using this time for health. Maybe a silver lining, right, Robbin, of this time?
I think there are lots of silver linings, actually. Yeah. And you know what? I think there's a lot of kids that are thriving, actually.
Me too.
To be home. And I personally love having everybody at home. I love it.
They get hot lunches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's called make your own lunch at my house. It's even
better. My kids love serious food. They are like foodies. So they like, one kid is homeschooled and already was homeschooled pre-COVID, but the other child goes to school 5 days a week because he goes to a very tiny little school. There's only like 40 kids, K through 12th grade. So, so when we were home, when they were both home, it was like, what are we eating? So, and they both know how to cook for themselves. I mean, my youngest is only 10 and has been using a gas stove since he's 6.
Wow.
So, and now he can use it without supervision. So he's pretty fancy. He can make all kinds of things. He can make
Oh,
his own soup. He can make eggs, pretty cool stuff. But the teletherapy toolkit was born with because there was no book. And I knew not only did my own therapist need ready to use activities that are based on sound theory, but they needed to be engaging, they needed to be fun, they needed to be visual. And so that's what I did. And it's something that school professionals can use, OTs. And there's even a lot of really cool stuff for parents to use in this book because we do things like, coping statements, and learning how to talk to your kids so that they learn how to cope with stress, which you're going to give the link for all the parents to get that for free.
yes, please.
But
Yes.
yes, but what is teletherapy? Teletherapy is therapy that is done through either the phone or video. And what has happened is that this has been around since the 60s. But now that everybody else is comfortable, like, Robin, you've been using Zoom a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no big deal
And
for me.
it's no big deal. So when this all went down, people were like, what do I do? How do I do it? Now, like, people can see me in person and they actually are choosing to do an intake uh, via Zoom, which is so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So it's, there's a lot of benefits to teletherapy, in that kids can have accessibility if they're living in rural areas. You might be able to, like, people regularly, it's not unusual for somebody to drive, 1 to 3 hours each way to come and see me because
Oh,
of my
right.
specialty areas. Well,
Yeah.
now they can do a Zoom session.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just so cool. I know though, as a professional that uses Zoom a lot, though, I do get tired over Zoom. And I think, I definitely like want to be animated. And, I'm kind of animated anyway, but then afterwards I'm like, okay, how nice would it be to just have a regular phone call? But that's me. That's another
But
story.
so Robin, what do you do for Zoom fatigue? Because I have my own hacks, but what do you do?
I don't do anything.
Okay, well, let's talk about some Zoom hacks that
Oh, you help
parents can
me.
use with their kids too.
Yes.
So,
Because kids are
one,
feeling it too. 100%.
oh my goodness, are they feeling it?
Okay, what do we do for Zoom fatigue?
Okay,
I'm
so
writing
one,
it down.
yeah, write this down, Robin. So, one, go buy some cheap old blue blocker glasses on Amazon,
Okay.
and they sell them for kids. They are
Oh,
very effective if you wear them, right? Two, get up and step away and
yeah.
move. You want to do that every hour. I mean, and we would do that if we were at our desk. Like, why are we not doing that? It sort of feels like we're melting in there.
Yeah.
Get up in the morning and do exercise in the morning. I think that is really, really important to make sure that we're moving our lymphs, we're letting things flow in our body, because this Zoom fatigue is causing not just the drain on our eyes, but
Mm.
our bodies. Do eye breaks. So if you're in between sessions, close your eyes for 5 seconds, count to five, and then give yourself 5 seconds for your eyes to readjust. This is really important because it allows the muscle of the eye to relax.
Mm.
But and schedule breaks, like go and have lunch and go and do that. You're not going to do 10 hours. Well, maybe you are doing 10 hours of straight work, but 10 hours of Zoom is very, very tiring.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It
Yeah.
is a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever say I would do 10 hours, but I've done many hours, like maybe 6 or 7 hours with, call after call, client after client. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and it does get tiring and you want to
And
shift.
these kids are tired. Some kids are doing 6 hours of Zoom. So, structure and routine. Kids need structure and routine. Make a break, schedule for them. Put a break in there where they have to get away from their computer.
Yeah.
Don't let them game or get on their devices in between. Like, absolutely not. They need to make sure that they're putting in structured movement breaks.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
Right. Okay. I love that. And really it just resets everything, right? Brain, body, everything. And that's
Yep.
so important. Like we need to be like our kids need to be moving. We need to be moving. And so I love that. So blue blocker glasses, get up every hour, exercise in the morning, you just kind of get the blood flowing. Eye break, so close your eyes for 5 seconds, allow 5 seconds to readjust, and then schedule breaks in.
Definitely. You
Awesome.
got it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that. That's great. I'm going to use it, and I hope everybody else uses that too with your kids. So, okay. So teletherapy, you're saying, is as effective as regular therapy, right? Face to face therapy.
It is. Yes,
Okay.
according to research. And, what are some variables that make therapy effective? So, a person's motivation and, willingness to actually do some of the things that you're learning, uh,
Mm.
therapist experience and quality. There's a bunch of other variables, but those are some of the biggest ones that make a determination. Sometimes people want to come to therapy and not actually do anything.
Yeah.
It does happen more with adults. Kids are easy. Kids are always open to change. Their world is full of change. But with teletherapy, when you have a therapist who's really skilled at engaging, right? And that's what the breakdown is. No therapists were trained for teletherapy. So they're
Mm.
all feeling inadequate, right? Like they're feeling just like when they got out of graduate school. So I created this resource that is literally a handbook that is not only easy to use, but just filled with really great stuff with some of the most common issues kids are, dealing with, like focus problems and
Mm.
stress and anxiety, OCD.
Mhm.
These are the things that we see in our clinic.
Okay, well, that's I want to ask about focus issues, but I want to tell you something. Speaking of OCD, I do have a son with OCD, and I talk about him a lot. And we had the most incredible teletherapy experience. So I just want to tell you about it because we did a 3 week summer camp online with our children's hospital here with their OCD clinic. So they did what they normally do in person, but they did it here, and so it was intense to say the least. But 3 weeks was 4 days a week for my son, and my husband and I were on 3 days a week because, of course, there's a parent part and then there's the kid part. And if I hadn't experienced it, I would not have believed that it would be this effective. What was so great about it is that because the OCD that my son has, it's a lot of stuff at home. So really, it was better than doing it in person, where we would have gone somewhere, which would have been a drag because that would have just been it would have just consumed all 3 weeks of the driving back and forth and all that stuff. But the fact that we could move the computer around the house and say, okay, he's got a problem here with this, with that thing, it was so great. And his OCD is almost gone, almost gone, right?
I'm guessing you did exposure and response prevention. Did you do ERP?
ERPs. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
ERPs.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's tell everybody what it is so they can know. So first of all, this is amazing. I'm so glad that you did it. And I'm going to tell you that exposure, response, and prevention, ERP, is the most clinically effective treatment for OCD.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you found it because
Yeah.
not enough of us are trained. We are ERP therapists in our center. It's one of the main reasons why people come to us, especially when they have PANS and PANDAS, because PANS and PANDAS, sudden onset of a psychiatric issue due to an infectious disease source. And it's my first book, co-authored book with Epidemic Answer, Brain Under Attack. And OCD is a common
Yes.
sudden onset condition. So what's OCD, first of all, then we'll talk about ERP. So OCD is when you have obsessive thinking or compulsive behaviors. You don't just have to have compulsive behaviors, because people will say, I'm not hand washing. Like, that's not what
Right.
OCD. And kids have obsessive thinking way more than they have obsessive behaviors. And what is obsessive thinking? In particular, they will have a high need for reassurance. Like, mom, are you going to be here when I'm sleeping? Are you going to be here? Are you going to be here? Are you going to be here? They make families get stuck in rituals. And
Oh
OCD
yeah.
always starts with one thing: anxiety.
Mhm.
So they get anxious about something, and then there's an uptick, and then what they get obsessive thinking or compulsive behaviors in order to avoid the anxiety. And it's one of the most treatment resistant conditions out there
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons, but because the way the brain works, there's a negative reinforcement cycle, and parents who are doing amazing things and all their things, they're trying to navigate this, inadvertently reinforce the OCD. So like your kid says, are you going to be here? And you're like, of course, honey, I'm going to stay here until you fall asleep. Well, from a brain perspective, you actually reinforce this. And you're shaking your head, Robbin, because you learned this in ERP.
It's called family accommodations, Dr. Roseann.
You got it.
We were doing them all the time.
Yeah.
And they were driving us crazy, but we didn't
Yes.
stop because along with OCD comes OCD rage. So when we wouldn't do it, he would
Right.
rage.
Right.
And as as a sweet mommy that I am, like I love my babies, right? And as a parent coach, it's very hard, right? We empathize up and down, but what I didn't know is that, when your child says, will so what we learned, I'll just say this really quickly, is
Good. Yeah.
there's two different types, right? There's intrusive thoughts, there's it's just not right, and then there is contamination. My
Yeah.
son had it's just not right. So he would ask us to do things like repeat random words. Like we'd just be having a conversation like this, and he would say, "Can you say this again? Can you say conversation again? Can you say,"
Exactly.
and
Can
it
you?
would
Yeah.
just derail us. And so now we just say, no, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas there were
Yeah.
other parents in the group whose kids had intrusive thoughts about really serious things.
Serious
And
things, everything
really,
from self-harm
yes,
to
yes,
religious things to
yes.
dark things like demons. There's all kinds of things. It doesn't mean your kid is crazy. Please
No,
know
no, in
that.
fact, they're the
It means
least
that they're
likely
stuck.
people. Yeah, they're
Right.
the least likely people to do it because
Yeah.
everybody has intrusive thoughts, and they're the ones that worry about whether or not they're actually going to be the kind of person who does it.
So beautifully said.
Yes, thank you. And so what happens is of course, as parents, we would say, "No, my love, no, 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 you're okay. You're gonna
Right.
do okay. You're not gonna hurt anyone." But now, actually, what you have to say is, "Yeah, yeah, you might."
And the reason why, so let's talk about what ERP is, because and it doesn't matter if you have OCD, it doesn't matter if you have anxiety, it doesn't matter what it is. And that's
Yeah.
why I did this bonus of the coping statements, because wait till you see it. It teaches you how to help your kids cope without reinforcing those behaviors. So this wasn't planned, this conversation, and it just kind of organically came up, right? But we are not used to being uncomfortable, right? And
Oh yeah.
so when people get uncomfortable, this is why people are reaching for antidepressants and benzos and all these other things. We are supposed to be uncomfortable and learn to tolerate it. Okay. Now, in a clinical situation with anxiety and depression and OCD, what happens is, and particularly for OCD, from a brain geeky neuroscience perspective, you actually reinforce it, just exactly what you did in that example. So what is ERP, exposure and response prevention? And you find an ERP provider at iocdf.org. Okay, it's the International OCD Foundation. That's where you're going to find it. Or the Anxiety and Depression Association of America will have providers that are trained in this. And do not go to anybody who is not trained in ERP for OCD. You're going to waste a lot of heartache, a
Yeah.
lot of money, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt your family.
It's
The
taken
hope.
10 years. It's
Yeah.
taken 10 years to get to that one experience.
Yes, and look how quickly it resolved, because they use science. Okay, so everything I do is about science, and we need to use science. We don't
Absolutely.
check under the hood in mental health,
No.
and our children are suffering. And if we just looked at the research, which is what I do and why people get better and stay better at our center, because I only use research-based techniques for mental health. It's
Absolutely.
not rocket science in finding these things. You know what I mean? Like you could be a Google MD and find these things, you know? It's hard to learn these things. So ERP is exposure and response prevention. So people really simplified, we identify what people's triggers are. What are those things? Like, so your son had intrusive thoughts. What are those intrusive thoughts? And you make a list of your intrusive thoughts. And then in a safe environment, the child or the person is exposed to them. they learn to understand that they can cope with them. And
Mhm.
when you do that, you break this brain cycling. It's called a negative reinforcement loop. And then parent education is paramount in this process. This
Yes.
will not work unless the parents are trained. And boy, does it require work.
Oh,
And you did it super condensed. We do a condensed too. We do a 2-week program too.
oh wow.
But typically it's at least 14 weeks. Please know nobody's got a magic wand. Therapists do not have a magic wand, and Dr. Roseann doesn't have a magic wand. But when we do ERP, we often pair it with neurofeedback or biofeedback.
Yes,
So we
yes.
calm the nervous system down. Then
Mm,
they're more capable of rational thought, and the
mm,
work is easier because you're not activated. When we're in
right.
a hyperactivation of the nervous system, you're not as capable physiologically of rational thought. But ERP is awesome. It's awesome. And I'm
Mm.
so glad. And I also want to say that, OCD can wax and wane at different points. And when
Oh,
you
does it
start to
ever?
see it go up a little bit, you go back to your ERP therapist
That's
and
right.
you shut it down. But you're a perfect example of how you can reduce and often reverse mental health.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so exciting to see, my son not be gripped by that, to actually have a conversation with my boy without having to repeat. And, so it gave us a huge chunk of our life back. And I can't
So
even,
glad.
I can't be more grateful. So
And I'm sorry that it took you
yeah.
10 years
Mhm.
because it's silly that it took you 10 years. It's not okay.
It's
Like,
not
it's
okay.
really not okay. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and
Nope.
there's lots about our story that is, quite frankly tragic because I spent most of the time thinking it was my fault, and so anyway, that's, it's one of those things I know a lot of moms do. A lot of moms feel a lot of
Oh my
shame.
gosh, we're so terrible to ourselves.
We're real and to each other, and
Oh,
that's got
and
to
to each
stop.
other. Yeah,
It's got to stop.
absolutely.
We're
Yeah.
all trying our best, and we
Right.
are incredibly strong with everything that we have on our plate, everything that we do. So I'm glad you agree with that. Cause I mean, you're a mama, I'm a mama, we love our babies and we do so much. So,
We do so much. And the world is hard right now.
it's really
And
hard.
it's really hard. And people are experiencing stress and hardship and,
Yeah.
I see people losing their patience and their manners
Yeah.
and we've got to be kinder to ourselves.
Well, okay, so let me ask you then, because I think that it makes me really want to ask you, like, what is the difference then between stress and anxiety? Because there's both happening right now, right? And
Yes.
yeah.
So stress, we all experience stressors, right? Somebody was unbelievably rude to me today, right? So, which I'm never okay with. And when you come to my center, you have to sign 3 different documents that says you will have good manners.
That's great. I
Yeah.
mean, it's too bad you have to have that, but anyway.
Well, do you know what I mean? And why is that? Because we love you up here and we want you to be as loving to us as we are to you. But I also want you to tell me I'm having a bad day. Can you help me? Because I'm cool with that, right? You know what I mean? Just tell us, like, be like, throw me a lifeline. That's what we're here for, right? Don't scream at us, and don't scream at the office staff, because sometimes people are as nice to me and they scream at the office staff. But
Yes.
happen. So somebody was rude to me. Life is a stressor. Who doesn't have that? So we have a stressor, and the way our nervous system works is that we have a baseline, right? So I'm for those of you listening, I have my hand down on the bottom, and then I have a hand in the top, right? And so in between is our nervous system and what it does. And our baseline, we're supposed to be in a relaxed state, and that's called a parasympathetic state. And at the top is a sympathetic dominant state. Okay. So a stressor happens. Somebody was really rude to me. I get anxious, and then I go, okay, Roseann, and what do? I'm always a grateful person. I'm a glass half full, all these things. I put in my resources and I mitigate it. Okay. And that's what happens most of the time. Right. Then what happens is stress builds. Stress builds, stress builds, stress builds. Your nervous system starts to become hyperactivated on its own. And stress can be good stress and bad stress. Your body knows no different. certainly when we're under bad stress, like, relationship breakups or difficult jobs or a child that's having a hard time, it is going to feel a lot worse. But your nervous system gets in a hyperactive state, right? And then what happens is you start reacting to things more and more and more. And this is the physiology of the body. This is not, this is called psychoimmunology. We understand what happens to the body under stress. And eventually those stressors can become anxiety. It can flip into clinical, and in long-term anxiety often turns into depression. So we often think of mental health issues as only genetic. I'm telling you, that's the least common thing that I see. What I'm seeing is a lot of chronic levels of stress. I'm seeing a lot of inflammation causing mental health issues. And then I see genetics. Now, the first two can pull out a genetic component. And there's epigenetics. So there's all kinds of things where we're having mutations. But the difference between stress and anxiety is when you've experienced high levels of stress or distress for more than 6 months. And you are now clinically anxious at a level where it's interfering with something in your life. Maybe it's interfering with your relationship. Maybe it's interfering with how you sleep. There's something where there is an effect that is lingering. I always call it stuck. You're stuck in some way. And so that's where we are all stressed, but are you generally coping very well? You're generally kind of happy. And, it's okay for us to acknowledge this is a stressful time in the world. But some people have started experiencing panic attacks for the first time in their life, or, I'm seeing a lot of depression due to social isolation of all ages, of adults and kids, So
Yeah. Okay. So you said stress over a long period of time, right? So that's your parasympathetic or your sympathetic?
So the parasympathetic is your good, your chill out. The sympathetic is your, I'm in a maxed out, my body's preparing for war. It doesn't know what's going on. It's going to use all its resource to try to find this stressor. And that's where a lot of health problems come up, because the body diverts its resources to find the stressor.
Okay. Okay. And so then would you say then that anxiety after 6 months or so of extreme stress turns into anxiety? So is that really rooted in fear of it continuing to happen, that you're just scared to experience these things over and over again? Like, is that what that is?
Well, so there's a lot of sources. So there are people that get caught up in a fear-based way, right? And so in general, 70% of all decisions are based on fear, and that we're avoiding something, right? We're avoiding a consequence. Well, I don't want to apply for that job because I'm afraid that I'll have to work more hours or whatever it is. So, but what happens is, it's really just an activated nervous system. And we're living in a world where there's things activating our nervous system, like being on Zoom all day, or having a really hard job, or a kid that's difficult, or your kid getting bullied on the bus. Like, I had nasty neighbors at the bus stop who purposely excluded me, those ladies on the bus stop. And boy, do they regret that, because I talk about them all the time. So, like whatever. So how stressful was that? Like, it literally was traumatic for me to experience that. So we all have these stressors that build within their body. And yes, we can mitigate them, but we cannot live in chronic stress. What will result is physical problems, mental health problems. It's going to happen. And this is kind of where we're at with ourselves as adults and with kids too.
So then what's the best way to manage that stress? Is it mindset? Is it ERPs? What is it?
Yeah. So what a wonderful question. So, I have a program called the Get Unstuck program, and it's really a way to teach parents how to change their child's mental health, but really to bring this to the family, right? So it's lifestyle changes. It's really saying there's things that I can do that I am in control of as the CEO of my family's health, right? Moms and dads, caregivers too, of all kinds, because we have families in all shapes and sizes in the world. And what happens is you have to start with the foundation. So that's nutrition, that's looking at nutrient deficiencies, it's looking at possible genetic mutations, which there's so many that impact mental health. But guess what? There's a lot of things you can do to mitigate them, particularly through supplements and dietary changes and things like that. But I think most importantly, and really kind of like my Miss America platform, is stress management, right? And we all can do things every day, and you have to do them every day, and you have to do them at least 10 minutes a day. So what are some great things to get your nervous system regulated so you can be what I like to call stress inoculated? So stress does not hit you in the same way, and your body can recover because you can get the resiliency. So I talk about resiliency mindset, right? And there's 3 parts to resiliency. And this goes back to stress because we want to be resilient to stress. So the first part is changing how you view it. The second part is changing how you manage it. And the third part is changing how you recover from it. And we can get wiggle room in all of these areas. Our nervous system's going to benefit, our body is going to benefit, and our behavior is going to benefit, right? And some of us are more equipped at this. Like I can tell, Robbin, you're like a glass half full, you're a sunny kind of person. You and a glass half full person are not half empty, are not going to view the same thing at the same way. So what we can do is we can change and start small. We can start with those coping statements. Well, how can we get our kids to cope differently? How can we have gratitude? How can we do things that change our mindset, right? We want to regulate our nervous system, so we can do things like breath work, right? Meditation, yoga. I always put in biofeedback because you can get very inexpensive biofeedback devices. And these are things that the whole family can use. But you have to spend 10 minutes a day, minimum 7 days a week, powering down your nervous system, getting it to be quiet, getting it to regulate. Breath work is cheapest and easiest thing. Nobody's got an excuse for that. You can.
Sorry to interrupt you. By breath work, you mean deep breathing?
Yeah. So do you want to talk like a few easy ones to think about?
Yes, please.
Is a 4-7-8 breath. So it's in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8, and you repeat that for rounds of 3 until you regulate. Okay. And it's so easy. You know, I started doing these things. You could do a star breath where you trace a star. You can have a little kid lay on the ground and put a stuffed animal on their belly and practice a belly breath. I mean, there's so many kinds of breath. There's yoga breath. I mean, just pick one and try it.
Right. And it's not just like a buzzword to say breathe. It actually works. You cannot do that 4-7-8 breath and not feel better. It's absolutely
because the science of it, Robbin, is to bring you down into a parasympathetic, calm, chill out state.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you know, you start doing that and your nervous system is way more chill. You know, I always try to say to people, if you planning a wedding, okay, super stressful. The day of the wedding, you find out you're not getting flowers. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to be like, but you know, if that happened at your kid's birthday party, you're going to be like, you know, it's not as significant, right? So when we start getting our nervous system to not react to things, our mindset changes. We are more equipped at dealing with things and we can manage it better. I mean, obviously in the management of these things, we want to teach our kids. You just taught your kid to manage his intrusive thoughts. That's exactly what you did. And look at the difference in his mental health.
Right.
He's in control. He talks back to that OCD and boy, did he slay it.
That's right. Yeah, he bossed back the OCD. That's exactly what we
Yeah.
say. I don't
Yeah.
want to take credit for teaching him though. The amazing doctors taught him, but yeah, we help him. And you know what I always say too, which I love to say, is when people push back about stuff like this, right? Like, oh, I just, I don't have 10 minutes or whatever, and you talked about being uncomfortable. And the thing is, you're already uncomfortable. So why not do something that might be uncomfortable at the start, but is actually going to make a difference in your life? Like, let's do it. It works. It absolutely works. And you have the science to back it up, which means no arguments, just do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said that. We already are uncomfortable. So take
Yeah.
the time to do something that's going to unwind that and
Yeah.
will bring calm to your life, joy, focus. I mean, so many people are unfocused, not because they have ADHD, it's because they have anxiety. You know how many people come to me? I do a brain map where I can see exactly what's going on in the brain, and they say, I've got ADD. I do the brain map, and I'm like, no, you actually have anxiety.
Mhm.
And then we do clinical history and we figure it out. But people are suffering because we are stressed, we are anxious, we're doing all these things, but we can take that back. And like, thank you for sharing your son's story, who was really struggling for a while. And now, you did some intense work. And that's also got a science behind it too, because
Yeah.
when you do it intensively, which is what we do for some of our peeps, you can unwind the behaviors easier from a neurological perspective, because he couldn't outthink it because you
Yeah.
forced it, right?
Yeah, he's pretty smart too. He would try to outthink this thing, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But
Well,
he's bombarded with it every day. You're right. Yeah, it,
yeah,
it, it was very impactful that way. If we had to wait every week, once a
yeah.
week, once a month, it would not have at all. And it would have been all on us. And quite frankly, that's above our pay grade, to do serious work, right? Like,
Love
yeah.
that. Yeah, I know, right? It's worth it. I love doing, I mean, you do get a lot of change weekly with ERP. You do, because it's done in a different style. But I love intensive work. I mean, I just think, especially when people have been suffering for a long time, to see change in 2 to 3 weeks, it's pretty amazing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Well, okay. So this has been really good. Now, I said before that I wanted to kind of go back to how you can reverse these really challenging behaviors or conditions, I should say. They're not behaviors, they're conditions. So something like ADHD or so autism got my attention. Lyme
Yeah,
disease, pandas. So how do you do that?
yeah.
And I know you have steps and different things, but how do you do that?
Yeah. So, like I said, I've had the privilege to work with so many thousands of families over these years. And, it is a partnership, number one. So you have to, just like you trusted and partnered with your provider, people
Yeah.
do that with me. And so that's why we get a lot of change, right? So when you are working with somebody like a health coach,
Mhm.
you need to honor and listen to what they're doing and take those steps to implement, and certainly you are the CEO of your own health, absolutely 100%. But you have to start by saying, what I'm doing isn't working. I'm here. So let me do these things and see them through. So I think that's really important, because
Okay.
it's so scary out there. And just like you are somebody who's knowledgeable, you still struggle to find somebody. So
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
100%, right? So number one, start with those foundational pieces that we talked about before, and understand that it's multifactorial. So I don't have a magic wand. There's not one thing. But what I have found is that we address sleep, nutrients, diet, stress
Mhm.
management, and we do it very comprehensively together, not in a way that overwhelms people. Some of these issues are really serious, and yes, it requires a lot of intensity. But if
Yeah.
we took a standard anxiety case where kids are struggling, which, let me tell you, kids are struggling with anxiety, that's the number one thing I've seen in 30 years just go through the roof. And the research says now it's surpassed depression as the most common issue in America. So then the magic juju is to regulate the nervous system, come in with new learning. What's new learning? That's working with a licensed therapist to
Mhm.
find new behaviors. And we often want to think about, well, I'm going to regulate the nervous system with a pill. And people, there isn't a pill to change behavior. It requires the unwinding of a learned habit. And learned habits can happen with a 1-year-old, and they certainly happen with 80-year-olds. So everything in between, and that is really, really critical. And I think the things that I want to say to parents is that I'm there, I'm a special needs mom too. And you everything feels overwhelming. Start small, start somewhere. I feel the two most important things to start with are diet and using an anti-inflammatory diet. It's a lot of science about how it reverses and changes those symptoms. And then 2, stress management. So whether you're adding meditation, you can use free apps like Headspace, right?
Yeah, I
Timer.
use Breathe. I love Breathe. I love it
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much.
So amazing. And you can turn it on by your kid's bed and they can do the meditation before they go to sleep. You can do things that are so easy. Do breath work, do biofeedback, do yoga, do these things, do them as a family. Like,
Yeah.
right? I talk about my stress with my kids. I show them how I manage it,
Yes.
often healthily. I'm not saying if you've driven in a car with me, sometimes it's not healthy, but but I do EFT
You're human
tapping.
too.
I'm a human, darn it. Don't anybody, Dr. Rowe is not perfect, and nobody should try to be perfect
No,
because
no, especially don't try to be a perfect parent because that just doesn't exist.
that's just silly. They're all, if they tell you there's nothing, their kids are fantastic and perfect, they're liars. Um,
Don't believe what you see on Facebook and Instagram. Don't
oh my
believe.
God, don't believe it. Don't believe it. You know, I have one child that's more is a glass half empty and another child that's a glass half full.
Yeah.
And oh boy, they challenge you. You know, either both of them do. And so for parents to understand how they really can reduce and reverse those symptoms. I mean, obviously, you know, we walk people through these things. I mean, I created a self-guided course, the Unstuck program, and that's one thing. And then we have our book, It's Going to Be Okay, which will come out in the winter of 2021. But these things are there, and 90% of them parents can do on your own. I mean, I've seen a lot of mental health issues resolve with the focus on stress management and diet. I mean, I really, really, really have. Now, what's happening in mental health today is like your son, there's layers,
Yeah.
right? And the longer you go on, the layers become greater, not just behavioral, but the body breaks down due to that
Mhm.
chronic stress. So you could get eczema in there, or hair loss, or stomach aches, or a gut bacteria imbalance. And so you can do corrective work.
Mhm.
And even though we may feel overwhelmed by that, I want you to think differently. I want you to think, well, wow, there's some solutions. There's
Mhm.
ways for me to get 5% here, 10% here, 5% there. There are lots of things that people can do to improve their mental health. And some of these things work really quick. But behavioral and learning, it shouldn't be dismissed. And that's why psychotherapy is so, so important. And think about it as somebody who's your coach to get you
Mhm.
through and guide you, just like you experienced, Robbin.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it makes a huge difference. We all need help and support. We all need, and especially in parenting, you know, to me, I look at it like nobody teaches us how to do this. Nobody does, let alone a child with special needs, right? Here, you can have a typical child and be lost, and having a kid with special needs is extra hard. And then we add the layer of a pandemic and, you know, a lot of other stress in the world that a lot of people are dealing with. And so can I just bring it back for a second to the virus? Because I want to kind of ask you a bunch of questions about this, sort of fire some questions away
Sure.
at you. What do you say to the mom that, or the parent who has a child that might have a pre-existing condition, right? And is terrified of the virus, and knowing that if their child gets the virus, maybe that child could die, maybe they can't visit them in the hospital. What
Yeah.
do you say to that parent that is spinning out of control with sheer terror, fear, and anxiety?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is where moms and dads and caregivers need to put their own oxygen mask on and take care of themselves because, I was at ground zero. We're really a suburb of New York City where I am in Connecticut. And so things were bad. You can't even understand how bad it was in March and April and May. And I wind up coining the term reentry panic syndrome because as people try to re-enter their lives, they were getting unbelievable amounts of panic. So what I want to say, I developed something called the REPS protocol, which is respirate, envision, success, visualize that, and then practice stress management. And so put that oxygen mask on, calm yourself, and also want to validate some of these concerns are real. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think it's most important not to push fear into our children. Our children are looking to us. They learn not to make you feel bad, parents, but they're learning how they cope with stress. They're learning how to deal with this virus based on our response. So
100%.
even if you're terrified, pretend, like, I don't want to say pretend you're not, but don't be openly freaking out in an hysterical way in front of your kids. It's not okay to do that. You
No.
can say, I'm worried about it, right? I'm worried about it, but then here are the things I'm doing to protect us, right? And I
Exactly.
think the larger conversation, Robbin, is what are parents deciding? So, like, about a quarter of the US population is homeschooling their kids right now, not even virtual learning. They estimate that they pulled them out of school. So, you make a decision that works for you and your family and don't look for approval from somebody else. But if you're stuck in this high level of anxiety, seek out a therapist. This
Yeah.
is important. Absolutely, it's important to do that. And they can help you because I've seen people with zero history of mental health problems with this pandemic experience anxiety, depression, and panic attacks like I have never seen in 30 years.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for all of that. That's really helpful. Um, yeah, I so agree with you about not putting it on your kids, right? You've got to be really careful. Like, yes, you can be worried and do something about it, right? But when we are stressed, we got to be really careful what we say, how we show our stress, because when we're stressed, our kids are stressed. We know for sure that our stress is contagious. And then when our kids are stressed, it shows up in behavior that we want to change, behavior we don't like, behavior that we want to punish. And that's not good for anybody, right? Then you just start in this spiral of everything being affected, and we can stop it. We can, just like you said, say, okay, I got to put my hand up and ask for some help right now because this isn't good. And I'll say to my kids too, sometimes I'll just talk about my feelings. I'll just say, look, you guys, I am having a rough day today. I know that I might come across harsh and I don't mean to do that, so I might need a little extra space, or I might need an extra couple of hugs. Like, talk about, that's what I do, at least talk about it, because I want to normalize what it's like to have feelings and have age appropriate, explain, look, I am a little worried, or I'm a little stressed about work, or this happened, whatever, and it's okay, and I need space, and I'm going to go do a quick meditation, or I'm going to go lie down.
Robbin, I virtually say the same darn thing. Like
Oh,
you did it, said it beautifully. I mean, I do this all the time. Like you want to have that metacognitive talk with your kids. Like that's a
right.
fancy way. Like what you're thinking in an appropriate way. Just exactly
Yes.
what you said. Like, oh my gosh, something happened. Like, something happened last week to me. And my kids were like, what happened? I was like, literally, mommy had to pull it all nighter. I won't be driving you to school or picking you up, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. We took care of it, and this is how I'm dealing with it. And then I'll meet you in the hot tub at 7 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they know there's things in the world. Like we're all trying to cocoon our kids. Like,
Mhm.
no, we are going to be okay. Like even right
Yeah.
now, what's happened? It's going to be okay. Like my dad is a World War II survivor, kid.
Mhm.
He's okay. This is outside of our control. Nobody wants this.
Exactly.
Nobody likes this. But let's just say, here's what we can control. We can wear our masks, and not to get in a statement about masks, but if you're sending your kid to school, you must put a mask on. That is it. So whatever your philosophy is, We need to love our kids enough to say, you want to go to school? I'm cool with you going to school. Put your darn mask on. Let's cool, bedazzle it, feel good about it. Don't
Yeah.
put your stress on them. But it's also okay to show that you get stressed, but show them
Yeah.
how you manage it in a healthy way.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. And I think that's so great. Love your kids enough to make them wear a mask. You wouldn't tell them not to wash their hands, right?
No.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, is there going to be a long-term impact from this pandemic on our kids?
I mean, I think that first of all, I have to say that for the kids that are going back to school, kids are doing really well. We had all these worries. I know, right? We had all these worries about if they were going to wear their mask and this, that, and endurance, and they're doing great. Like they're doing great. And contamination levels, like for a place that was literally like hell on earth where we were, is they're doing great. So the long-term impact, I mean, there will be an impact. They're not getting the same level of education. So there'll be a learning regression, somewhere in there. We're missing our peeps. I mean, I'm missing my friends so hard. Like I was always on an airplane and doing a lot of work and doing a lot of media, and whatnot. And so then I would see all my friends in LA or this, that, and the other thing. We're not going to see each other for a long time. It's going to be probably 18 months to 2 years before I really get together with friends that are a distance that I can't drive to. So there'll be an impact, but also know kids are so resilient. So resilient. And one of the biggest determinations of their mental health is our mental health and how we're managing stress. They learn everything from us. They learn parenting from us. I mean, they learn how to cope with stress from us. So those conversations are really important. And use this time to dive deep into a hobby and find other ways to do that. So for us, I love traveling. Like we traveled all the time. Silver lining is we get to like enjoy the Hodge compound a lot more. So
that hot tub at 7 p.m. tonight, that's where you're going to be. So
yeah. And we got another fire pit, we're always out there outside, and my kids are like, we have all the seasons where I live. So, we'll find a way. I'm not going out there, kids, when it's, below 30 degrees. It's not happening. Dr. Rowe is a summer lover, but Mr. Hodge will be out there in his gear with the boys. So, you have to embrace where we don't know, but I think that kids are going to be okay. It's us. We have to learn to cope and use those skills and just share them with our kids.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to end on here today as well. And just reinforces the fact that we need to take care of ourselves first, because it is absolutely essential for managing the well-being of our family, right? So don't mess with this. Go and do your stuff. Go and find a way to get some help if you need help with your kids so that you can go and get yourself taken care of, right? Whether it's that meditation, that deep breathing, some therapy, do it. You're certainly not going to, it's not going to hurt in any way.
And it's not a luxury, Robbin. It's not a luxury. We make self-care. This is a necessity. So find 10 minutes, go sit in the car in your driveway, go hide in the laundry room, whatever you got to do, give yourself that 10 minutes. Or invite your family in on your journey of stress management, because we do that all the time. We'll put a meditation on, we're hippy dippies, as I like to call, but I love it. We're not really, we're just using science to regulate our nervous system and be happier.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Where can everybody find all of your amazing tools and support? Where can we find you? Because we already love you. I love you.
Oh, you're so sweet. So you can get my coping statements at teletherapytoolkitbonus.com, all one word, teletherapytoolkitbonus.com. And then you can find me on childrensmentalhealth.com or drroseann.com.
Okay, that's great. And I'll put all of those in the show notes so everybody knows where to go to see you and get your help. Thank you so much for being here. This was the best conversation, and we really just need to keep talking about it, right? Normalize it, talk about it, and then you know what? It has a ripple effect in our family and throughout the world. And let's be honest, the world needs a little love right now.
They do. And thank you for sharing in this really important conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McManne, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and